ArcfieldWeather.com meteorologist Paul Dorian here on Monday morning, August the 11th. We'll focus in on the tropical scene across the Atlantic Basin this morning. It looks like there will be a hurricane in the western Atlantic Ocean by about the middle of next week or so. I was concerned about that August 20th time period for such a system. Odds favor it's staying out over the open waters of the western Atlantic, but it will be a close enough call that it certainly will be very important to monitor this situation over the next several days. We'll talk about some of the players involved. Again, we're talking about maybe next Tuesday or Wednesday or so, the 19th or 20th of August, for its potential closest approach to the U.S. East Coast. First of all, let's take a look at the latest MJO, the Madden-Julian Oscillation. We talked last week about the fact that this was moving into a more favorable position for an increase in tropical activity across the Atlantic Basin. It has moved into those particular locations or phases that are more conducive to activity in the Atlantic Basin, and certainly looks like we'll have our first hurricane of the tropical season. Here we are moving in this counterclockwise fashion here for the MJO, and basically this next 10 days or so we will be in what we call phases 2 and 3, and these are usually quite active time periods for the Atlantic Basin. So again, over the next 10 days or so, it certainly looks like it'll be an active period, and the MJO is supportive of that going into the latter part of the month of August. Beyond that, it may move back into a less favorable position here, so perhaps things will quiet down towards the latter part of August. Well, here's the latest official map from NOAA's National Hurricane Center, and this is the storm of interest right here. That red X here, that was the fourth wave that we talked about last week. Really, all along seemed to have the most chance of surviving the trek all the way across the tropical Atlantic Ocean. At least it had the highest chance of moving into the western part of the Atlantic Ocean. There were 2 or 3 other waves ahead of it, including this one right here, that will stay away from the western part of the Atlantic Ocean. But this system right here looks like it will easily become a named tropical storm, very likely become Hurricane Erin, the first hurricane of the Atlantic Basin tropical season. Again, by the early to middle part of next week, it should be somewhere in this region right here. And odds favor right now it's staying just to the east of the U.S. East Coast, but certainly something we'll have to closely monitor over the next 7 to 10 days or so. Well, let's take a look at the latest colorized infrared satellite image. This is from University of Wisconsin, CIMSS site. It's a very good tropical website for tropical information. This is the west coast of Africa right here. And you can see over the continent of Africa still several waves here. These are all tropical waves. This time of the year they move basically from east to west in this fashion here, riding along with the trade winds. This is the system of interest right here. It is off the west coast of Africa now, over the very warm waters of the eastern tropical Atlantic, moving in this fashion here west to northwest. Very likely becomes a tropical storm, and quite likely it reaches hurricane status. And again, it would be the first official hurricane of the Atlantic Basin tropical season, taking the name of Erin, very likely in the western part of the Atlantic Ocean by Tuesday or Wednesday of next week. So a very active time period right here across the continent of Africa, and now especially focused on the eastern part of the Atlantic Ocean. Well, let's take a look at last night's 0Z run of the GFS, and then at the end I'll compare the GFS forecast as it stands right now. We're still 9-10 days away from the real crunch time here, but we'll take a look at the Canadian model forecast for 10 days out and the European model as well here. One of the players involved certainly will be high pressure ridge over the southeastern part of Canada. There's currently a strong high pressure ridge right now over the southeastern part of Canada, but That doesn't stay put here. We'll move forward here. We'll see it's kind of replaced by an upper level trough here by the middle or latter part of the week, and then reestablishes itself by the upcoming weekend. This is now the Saturday forecast map here. This will be a key player here going into the early and middle part of next week. Right here, we see next Monday, next Tuesday, right in this particular time frame here. We do have a ridge up in this part of North America, northeastern U.S., southeastern part of Canada. Relatively strong, not quite as strong as what we're seeing there right now. And here's the reflection at 500 millibars of the potential hurricane. Again, this would be Hurricane Erin, if indeed it materializes, and I'm quite certain it will. The stronger this ridge, the longer it hangs around in the southeastern part of Canada, the better the chance that this continues to move a little bit to the farther to the west here. Basic flow around upper level ridges is clockwise, and again, we often take a look at ridging in the southeastern part of Canada this time of the year because tropical systems can undercut the ridge moving from east to west. So this is a key player right here. Now we'll move forward in time and see what happens here. Another key player will be this upper level trough right here. If in fact this ridge continues to progress, move from west to east here, and this trough replaces it, this may be the saving grace for the U.S. East Coast. It may just come right in time to push this system away from the coast, as is depicted right here in this particular model run. And in fact, what happens here, the hurricane just stays to the east of the U.S. East Coast and pulls off to the north and east and helps to kind of pull in some cold air for this time of the year. And that's not all that unusual that a hurricane passes on by and drags in some cold air from the northwest to the southeast into the eastern part of the nation. So this is all the way out now to next Thursday, August the 21st. On this particular scenario, the system stays just to the east of the coastline here, and that key player number 2, that upper level trough, moves in from central Canada into eastern Canada by later next week. Now let's take a look at the 850 millibar temperature anomalies, again using the 0Z GFS model run, and we'll see that change to a colder pattern once that hurricane passes on by to the east here by the middle or latter part of next week. Here we go into the middle part of this week, then into the upcoming weekend. You can see some very warm conditions, some much cooler than normal conditions. Here kind of a topsy-turvy temperature pattern here across North America. Here we go into the latter part of the upcoming weekend. Now into the early part of next week. Now this is next Monday, a week from today here, and we'll see the reflection at 850 millibars right here of the what will likely be Hurricane Erin. But look at this blob of colder than normal air here cutting across the central part of Canada by next Tuesday. Again, there's that upper level trough associated with this cold blast right here, and indeed it can wait for this system to pass on by to the north and east, and at that particular time it'll drag in that colder than normal air. Again, this is a long-range forecast here. All this is kind of speculation at this point. This is 10 days or 11 days out, all the way to next Thursday, the 21st. But this will be a key player right here, and certainly on whether or not Erin ever has a chance to reach the U.S. East Coast. Hopefully, that front will be strong enough and moving quickly enough from west to east or northwest to southeast that will indeed cause Erin to turn away from the U.S. East Coast in the middle of next week. Now let's quickly go through the surface maps. Again, the 0Z GFS model run, and we'll take a look at the Canadian and European as well for the middle of next week, 10 days out. Here we go by Thursday of this week and then into Friday of this week. And notice high pressure over southeastern part of Canada. This is now at the surface level. Again, we'll be focused in on the southeastern part of Canada for the middle of next week. Here we go now into Sunday time frame. And notice a strong Canadian high, again moving to the south and east here into southeastern Canada by the early part of next week. This is 1 week from today. The hurricane at this particular time down here over the western Atlantic Ocean, and strong high pressure ridge right near the Hudson Bay region of Canada early next week. And here we go into the middle part of next week, Tuesday, and finally into Wednesday of next week. And the system just starts to turn at this time to the north and east. At the same time, we have that colder than normal air pressing to the south and east. So basically a cold front right here, kind of pushing from northwest to southeast, and will help to prevent this, potentially help to prevent this from ever reaching the coast. But it is too close to call for certain at this stage. This is still 9-10 days out here. This is a close enough call here that it's something we'll have to monitor closely over the next several days. Now, let me kind of clear the page here. This is the forecast map for 10 days from right now, the middle of next week, Wednesday, the 20th of August. And again, that was that kind of that time period that we talked about last week, around the 20th of August. This is the GFS model for this particular time. Here is the Canadian model run, fairly similar and awfully close to feel free of any concern here. This is too close to call here. We have to monitor this situation closely. That's the Canadian, and here's the European model. So really, all three of these models are relatively close when we're talking about 10 days out here. This is, again, the GFS, the Canadian, and the European model, all right in this area here by the middle part of next week. And that would be the first hurricane of the 2025 season, Hurricane Erin. Look for it to become a tropical storm over the next couple of days here, a named tropical storm. And then later on this week or weekend, potentially reaching hurricane status. And this is something we'll closely monitor over the next several days. That's it for now. For Arcfieldweather.com, this is the meteorologist, Paul Dorian.